The Douglas County Board of County Commissioners meeting will come to order this July 15, year 2021. 50 years ago, Vietnam ended. You got any veterans in here from Vietnam? Well, the youngest guy to die in Vietnam was a 15-year-old Marine. He lied about his age. Can you imagine? A couple of administrative items just before we get going. Mr. Cates had a family emergency with their Poochie, and all of us who've owned Poochies, we know how serious that can be, and he's doing what he has to do to take care of business. So Jennifer Davidson, Assistant County Manager, will be in the chair today. So that's why Patrick isn't here. In 2.5 years, he's never missed a meeting. All right. Commissioner Tarkanian, if you'll lead us in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I see the sheriff is here. There's no liquor licenses today, are there? I think this is the first time I've been to a board meeting where there wasn't a liquor license request or something. Okay. Public comment. Public comment will be taken during the beginning and again at the end of the board meeting. Additional public comment periods may be allowed on individual agenda items at the discretion of the chairperson. If it is requested that members of the public provide public comment on those agenda items which they are, as they are considered. Public comment is limited to 3 minutes per spokesperson, per speaker, or on matters over which the board has jurisdiction, supervision, or control. It is requested that the public comment on be respectful and in differing viewpoints, and that individuals do not engage in personal attacks or become disruptive of the order of the conduct of the meeting. In addition to the opening public comment will be also be taken on the following agenda items when they are discussed by the board. Items 3, 4, 5, 6, and 9. Item 2 is no longer going to be on the agenda. That'll be explained in a moment. At this time, public comment will be taken on those items that are within the jurisdiction and the control of the Board of County Commissioners. Is there any public comment?
My name is Bird. I go by Tim Wiper. I'm currently a resident at 17 Beach Club Drive in the Tahoe Beach Club community. I want to basically thank the commissioners for working so hard to get the new VHR ordinance put in place, and today is a celebration of the day of that first being enacted. I also wanted to be here today, though, and explain that myself and approximately 38 other homeowners are concerned that we've been working to get the density as stated in the ordinance to be 15% for our community, as our community is designated by TRPA as a single-family community. The underlying zoning for our property is multifamily, but single-family is allowed in that category. You did a terrific job in putting the ordinance together. The ordinance has a section in it that says that the TRPA designations will apply. The situation since 2008, when the TRPA approved the development there in their final board meeting, they made it clear that it was a single-family community, residential community made up of condominiums. Their definition of a condominium is a single-family resident. The current tax assessor here in Douglas County lists everything as fee simple, single-family townhomes. So my main concern is that in working with staff over the last 3 months, and as recently as just Tuesday of this week, Sam Taylor issued a directive that Tahoe Beach Club would not be considered anything but multifamily. So I'm here today just to be sure that the commissioners understand you did a wonderful job of putting an ordinance together, but the community's at odds with the county staff. We do intend to continue to pursue it and try to search for some results that'll be favorable. We do wish that there would be the 15%. I did ask on the behalf of the other residents that the county even stay the density at 15% until this could be resolved. That was also denied. We are working also with the developer of our community and with TRPA directly, and we hope to get some kind of a resolve. We hope that the 15% would be honored, and that if we could come to an agreement, even with the developer, TRPA, and ourselves, we hope the county would at least acknowledge that and not stay in the track of what their current decision is. So thank you very much for letting me address you, and thank you again for the hard work that you did. And it would be nice to see if we could follow through and have the intent of the ordinance that you put forth basically interpreted in a correct way.
Tim, thank you very much. Are there any other public comments?
Ted Gaines, contractor here in Valley. I wasn't going to come in this morning until I read the letters to the editors. I commend you for what you guys did with our manager. Excuse my hat. I question Mr. Tartanian. He hasn't known this county manager very long to make a decision to maybe give him a raise. I've been involved with him since he's been here. First thing this lady said is about his ethics. They picked on my missus, which works for the county. She found irregularities, 150, 180,000 that a department was losing here. So the building department and people went after her, as far as call her on her own work phone and threatened to take her house away, and on and on. Mr. Cates did nothing about that. The previous county manager did nothing about that. Now, I've been here many times complaining about this. People are probably tired of hearing them. But 5 of the 6 people that handled this case against us have all been relieved from the county. The only one that hasn't was the head of the building department. Now, you got somewhere between 9 and 15 good old boys who work for this county. That's who runs for the county. You guys need to know that. You have 9 or 11 employees in this county all work for the same contractor we built a building for because he didn't honor a contract. Contractor has been turned in numerous times for violations. Nothing's been done about it. So you guys need to know that without good management, you have a bad product. And right now we have a terrible product. I have 15 items here that I turned in a while back. I was told by county management they can't substantiate it. Well, I'm going to start coming in and doing one by one, and I'm going to substantiate them for you. So you guys have them. These have already been turned in, they've been documented, they've been checked by your audit committee. But now the real reason I came in is, Mr. Gardner, you changed your vote on the bypass. I'm neither here or for the bypass, probably a good thing. But when the bypass was originally passed, it was passed with light traffic specs. And I keep hearing something about trucks on the bypass. If we send trucks on a road that we built with the light traffic or auto traffic, it's going to break down. It's going to cost me and all the people in this room money. So I would appreciate it if you would look into the specs on the first phase of that that's already built. Because I was at that meeting, and it was a very heated meeting, and they said there will be no trucks on this bypass. And I just would like that looked into to verify so it don't cost us any more money. And other than that, I thank you guys for the gratifying job you guys have. And I'd like to say, one of the other commissioners, they went to the, you guys go into several county buildings. One of the commissioners here thanked people for bringing them water, for doing nice things for them, opening the door for them. The commissioner probably knows who it is, and I thank him for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gaines. Is there any further public comment? Seeing none, we'll move on to approval of the agenda. For possible action, approval of the proposed agenda, the Board of County Commissioners reserves the right to take items in a different order to accommodate business and in the most efficient manner, and to combine two or more agenda items for consideration and to remove items from the agenda or to delay discussion relating to the items on the agenda. Do I hear an approval of the agenda?
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Gardner.
yes. I move for the approval of the agenda minus item 2 on the administrative calendar.
There we go.
We have a
Second the
mo-
motion.
We have a motion by Commissioner Gardner, a second by Commissioner Nosad. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Just for a quick clarification, on item 2, the DA's office just got more information recently in the last day or two. There wasn't time to amend or change the agenda. So that's why it's being pulled, but it will be coming back. Thank you. Approval of the previous minutes. For possible action, discussion to approve the draft minutes of the June 3, 2021 and June 17, 2021 regular meeting of the Board of County Commissioners. We have a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I approve, I make the motion that we approve the previous minutes.
I'll second it.
We have a motion by Commissioner Nosad, a second by Commissioner Tarkanian. All those in favor signify by voting aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries 5-0. Okay, the consent calendar. Items appearing in the consent calendar are items that can be adopted with one motion unless an item is pulled by a commissioner or a member of the audience or the public. Members of the public who wish to have a consent item placed on the administrative agenda shall make the request during the public comment section of the beginning of the meeting and specifically state why they are making that request. When items are pulled for discussion, they will automatically be placed on at the beginning of the administrative agenda or may be continued and at another meeting. Okay, we're looking for a motion to,
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah.
can I get item I pulled? I only have one question for clarification, but would like that clarification before I approve it.
okay, then if we could have a motion and have item I pulled to the administrative agenda.
I'll second that, Mr. Chair.
We have a motion by Commissioner Tarkanian, a second by Commissioner Gardner. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries 5-0. Okay, we'll start with Douglas County presentations. Item number 1, this would be on, what? Okay, we're going to start on the administrative calendar with item I from the consent calendar. That is for possible action, discussion to approve a $55,000 contract with Moss Adams for compliance monitoring of the Douglas County American Rescue Plan Act, ARPA, funds effective July 1, 2021 through December 31, 2026, and authorize the county manager to execute any necessary documents. Ms. Willoughby, you have the floor.
Terry Willoughby for the record. I'd be happy to answer any questions on this item.
Yeah, well, thank you. I know this isn't a lot of money. It's $55,000 over 5 years, but I was wondering why the county felt there was a need to have someone be a compliance monitor for these American Rescue Plan Act funds. I mean, there's statutes that are given to us that shows what we can use it for and can't use it for.
Terry Willoughby for the record. They are performing subrecipient monitoring. Any money that we are a direct recipient from the U.S. Treasury in this case, which we typically never are. Any money that we pass through to other agencies has to be carefully monitored to make sure they spend the money in accordance with all the federal guidelines and procurement guidelines that exist with the federal grant, because we're on the hook for the money we pass through to other agencies. So they're coming in on the front end, reviewing all the documents and the receipts that those agencies would have, making sure everything's in order, so that when we get our single audit, everything's in great shape. And it's up to $55,000. They obviously work on an hourly basis, so that would be for the entire grant period.
I guess now I make a motion to approve it because we didn't approve it before. Okay, I'll make a motion to approve up to a $55,000 contract with Moss Adams for the compliance monitoring of Douglas County's American Rescue Plan Act.
I'll second.
We have a first and a second. Is there any more discussion with the board? Is there any public discussion on this matter? We'll now take it to a vote. All those in favor signify by voting aye. Aye. All opposed? The motion carries 5-0. Item number 1 is being moved to another board meeting when the DA's office is prepared with the information. Item number 1 is presentation only. Okay, item number 1, item number 1 for presentation only. Presentation and update of the Nevada Department of Indigent Defense Services and the legal services provided by Douglas County indigent defendants Jennifer Davidson, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission. Jennifer Davidson, Assistant County Manager for the record. While our presenters are getting situated, I'll provide the board with a brief introduction and reason for their presence here this afternoon. In 2019, the Nevada legislature created the Department of Indigent Defense Services. It was believed that those accused of crimes were not receiving the legal assistance they deserved and were entitled to receive under the Constitution and Nevada law. Although the pandemic last year has prohibited the department from getting out to explain the benefits of their services until this moment, they are very pleased to share with you today the work that their department does to ensure that those that are accused of crimes receive the legal assistance they are entitled to receive. At this point, I'll turn it over to our presenters and thank them for being with us this afternoon.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Marcy Reba, and I'm with the Department of Indigent Defense Services. I'm with Tom Qualls today, and as you heard, we were formed in 2019, but by the time we got the office built up, it was just in time to shut it down, so we didn't have an opportunity to come out in person and meet you. So we are ecstatic to be here today and give you a little bit of a background information about what we're doing, why we're here, and offer our assistance in any way that it's requested. So our mission is to provide support to counties to develop and maintain quality, cost-effective indigent defense systems that meet the needs of the local community and also the requirements of the Constitution and state law. So we're all referring to the Sixth Amendment of the United States Constitution that says, in criminal prosecutions, the accused shall enjoy the assistance of counsel for their defense. This is the makeup of the department. You can see that about a third of us are here to come and say hello today. We also have Jared Hickman, who is another deputy director, and then our support staff. Our department serves under a board of indigent defense services, and the board does have a lot of NACO appointees. You can see that there's some from Lincoln, Nye, and we do currently have 2 board vacancies at this point. So why did this all come about? Why are we here? Well, the ACLU brought a lawsuit against the state of Nevada, and they challenged the constitutionality of Nevada's practices of indigent defense systems in the rural counties. Now, I had to clearly define rural counties because it's just certain rural counties. Douglas County is one of them that they brought this suit against, but it includes Churchill, Douglas, Esmeralda, Eureka, Lander, Lincoln, Lyon, Mineral, Nye, and White Pine. The rural counties that are missing seem to be the counties that have organized a public defender's office exclusively, like a county office. The counties that appear to be included contract with public defenders to provide services. On June 3rd of 2019, the legislature passed AB 81, which created the Department of Indigent Defense Services. And on August 11th, 2020, the parties entered into a stipulated consent judgment. This stipulated consent judgment obligated our department to make sure that certain things were done. We have to start collecting data regarding indigent defense. We have to establish a standardized contract that's used. We have to approve new county contracts, which we've been in contact with Mr. Cates, and Douglas County has run their contracts through us. So Douglas County is aware of these new requirements. We have to ensure immediate access to applications for a public defender when you're arrested. We have to ensure that individuals are screened or their ability to pay for an attorney is reviewed within 48 hours. And we have to have counsel at first appearances. The first time you see a judge, we want to make sure that you have an attorney next to you. There's also other requirements in there, surveys. We have to do a weighted caseload study, which we're in the middle of, and we'll talk about that as we get more into this. And we have to establish certain minimum standards and duties. So our board took some of these requirements and they adopted temporary regulations on the Board of Indigent Defense Services, and those became effective March 5th, 2021. And the 2 that we're here to talk about today are the plans for the provision of indigent defense services and also the maximum contribution formula of what a county may be required to pay for indigent defense services. I'm going to cover the first part because that's the good news. And then Tom is going to talk about the plans and what we need to put in place, which Patrick Cates has been working with us in putting that together. So that maximum contribution formula, I believe I gave you a copy of our regulations, and it's in section 18. And it's basically the average of what you spent on fiscal year 18 and fiscal year 19 on indigent defense services minus murder or death penalty cases. From the reporting that we received from Douglas County, the maximum contribution was determined to be around $875,000. We also asked Douglas County, what do you think you're going to spend on indigent defense in fiscal year 21? And we were told it was about $891,000. So we knew there was going to be about a difference of $16,578. When we were building our budget, we took these numbers to the legislature, and they earmarked $1.2 million for the Davis counties. So since Douglas County is in that 19,000 or the 16,000 was requested as part of that $1.2 million. But what is indigent defense services? It's easy to say public defender, but our public defenders do a lot more than indigent defense services. So it's specifically defined as legal representation to an indigent adult who's charged with a crime, or an indigent child who's alleged to be delinquent or needed supervision. So like I said, your public defenders do a lot more than that. They do 432B actions, that's maybe removal of a child from a home, representation of a parent in a juvenile delinquency case, and involuntary commitments. When we're trying to figure out how much Douglas County is spending on indigent defense, we're not supposed to be including those expenses when we're trying to figure out the total. We have been having discussions with Patrick Cates and also Terry Willoughby about the new requirement for quarterly reporting. What our intention is that counties will on every quarter report how much is spent on indigent defense services on our form, and we'll be able to tell how much Douglas County has spent and whether or not they've reached their maximum contribution. Once Douglas County has reached their maximum contribution, then we'll request part of that earmarked fund from IFC to be reimbursed for the county. And that'll take us to the next part of the plans. And just to start with this, you might wonder, where did this plan come from? Why is there this new requirement to make plans? And this requirement is in NRS 260.070. It has certain requirements that the Board of Commissioners are supposed to do each year, and the deadline is generally May 1st. So by May 1st of each year, we're supposed to have the workload of the public defenders reported to us, so that's that data collection of cases. Also the estimate of costs of what it's going to be for the next fiscal year for indigent defense services. And then finally, the plan for indigent defense services is supposed to be turned into us of what we're going to do for the next year. Because these regulations are brand new and they only came into effect in March, the board gave counties additional time until September 3rd to get these plans done. So I'll turn it over to Tom to talk about that.
Thank you. So as Marcy mentioned, I think we've been working with Patrick Cates a little bit on this plan and the other stakeholders, but the idea is to kind of go through a few drafts, provide whatever guidance we can for the county, make it as easy as possible to comply with the statute, NRS 260.070. We want to encourage, and I guess our goal moving down is to promote more of an integrity between the attorney and client and kind of create a level playing field in the judicial system where public defenders and contract public defenders are treated on par with prosecutors as far as independence from the judiciary. So that's a big part of setting up the plans. Going into a little bit more detail here, we want to make sure that the resources are available for the different expenses that are needed, including experts and investigators. Again, we recommend, which will make it easier for us to request funds from ISC. It will make it more clear that the county has reached their maximum contribution. If the county creates a defense budget that's separate and outside of the judiciary for some of these expenses, because they're easier to track, and again, easier for us to justify the state supplementing the county's budget for these expenses. Again, we want to make sure that the indigent defense process is as free as possible from political and undue budgetary influence. And to, again, help take some burden off the counties by bringing the data that we need to the state system to get state support for this. Part of gathering this data is this weighted caseload study that we engaged in last year with the National Center for State Courts, who does this kind of thing. Again, because of COVID and the restrictions there, the numbers that we came up with weren't reflective of the normal judicial process. There weren't trials, there weren't as many cases brought, it was a completely abnormal year. So they have agreed to stay on for another 6 or 9 months as we collect data through this legal server system that I'll talk about. As part of this process, the Indigent Defense Services Department has provided, and the state is providing all of the counties and all of their indigent defense practitioners with a free case management system called Legal Server. We spent the month of June doing 2 trainings a week for everyone to try to help with the onboarding of this. And again, the idea is that we will be able to collect accurate data on caseloads, on hours worked, on type of cases, on the amount of services of investigators and experts that are needed, and bring all of this, not only bring us into compliance with our reporting requirements, but allow us to assist the counties more in the budgetary process. The next thing is just our website and all of the resources there. We have, as we get counties' draft plans, we're putting them up on the website so that any other county that wants to reference them or use them as a guide can. We also have a model plan there that sets out an outline for what should be in the plan. And we have a financial reporting form to help people, to help counties put all of the information, kind of in the necessary format to make us easy for us to digest that and report it. We are here at the office. There's our emails. We're happy to help with any questions that you have. You can pick up the phone, you can email us. We're happy to have Zoom meetings or come back here and meet with everyone. Again, we've been working with Patrick on this, and we have a little bit of time, but we just want to make sure that you have all the support you need before September to get these things done. We are happy to answer any questions that you might have that we haven't answered.
Are there any questions from the board? Any questions from the audience? Marcy and Tom, thank you very much for your presentation. Very informative, and I'm sure we'll be seeing more of you. Thank you.
Thank you. And we can leave a copy of our annual report and pamphlets about what we're doing if you'd like to just look at it a little bit as well. So thank you for the opportunity.
Okay, moving on. Item number 2 has been pulled for further board meeting. So we're on item number 3. For possible action, discussion on the possible revision to Title 20, Chapter 20.600 and 20.694 of the Douglas County Code related to golf courses and open spaces, proposed increases to fines and public nuisance, and forwarding recommendations to the Douglas County Planning Commission. Mr. Ritchie, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chairman. Doug Ritchie with the Douglas County District Attorney's Office. This matter stems, it's been a couple of years. Henderson came out with an ordinance regarding a golf closure plan. As the chairman is aware, he's asked that this item be brought forward. We're currently in a drought. There's been concerns that golf courses and other large open spaces pose a particular threat to public health and safety if they're not properly maintained. I've drafted kind of an outline. It's in the form of an ordinance, but it's mainly to aid the board and the public as there's discussion on this issue. In order to make any change to Title 20, it would need to come before the Planning Commission, and then that would come back to the board for an introduction and then for possible public hearing and adoption. Mr. Jim Hartman is in the audience. He's been an invaluable resource to me as we've talked about this. I've looked at the Henderson ordinance. I spoke with one of their deputies, Amanda Kern. Again, this ordinance is not intended to just address golf courses that are closed, but to address any open space that, if not properly maintained, may pose a particular threat to public health and safety. I'm happy to answer any questions. Again, this is mainly for direction from this board before anything is taken to the Planning Commission.
Is there any public comment?
Well, Mr. Chairman, it's Jim Hartman for the record. It's been, I think, 20 months since we last talked about golf course ordinances. And the direction given by the Board of Commissioners back 20 months ago was for staff to develop some form of ordinance to bring back to the board. And that's happened now. And it's taken a while. Government runs slowly sometimes, but in any event, we have a draft ordinance and wanted to refresh people's memory on all of this. This initiative locally was really a result of the fact that there was a plan or a threatened plan to close Genoa Lakes, and that caused quite a stir at Genoa Lakes. 177 of 220 owners signed a card saying they'd like to see a Henderson-type ordinance developed in Douglas County. We have taken that support and also the support of the Homeowners Association that endorsed going forward with a Henderson-type ordinance across the whole county, because we have 7 golf courses in Douglas County, and we have now shared this idea with owners from, or parcel adjacent owners at 5 other golf courses. And we now have 410 parcel owners who have signed a card saying they'd like to see Douglas County go forward with an ordinance along the lines of Henderson. In looking at Title 20, we see deficiencies in a sense. It's sort of geared for a residential level of violation. The maximum penalty is $150 per day with a $10,000 cap. And the thought is that if we had a golf course that wasn't meeting the requirements of nuisance law or abatement, that kind of penalty really wouldn't be very persuasive with a golf course owner to maintain the golf course. So in any event, we hope this can go back to the Planning Commission and they can look at the ordinance, make some changes in the ordinance and bring it back to the Board of Commissioners and get something adopted. This is not, for the record, this is not where we're trying to be anti the golf course owners here. This is actually where we think are advancing a positive good here. It's good public policy. That's the idea. It's not to be punitive against the golf course owners. We want to work with the golf courses and keep them viable and active in the community here. But we hope this can go down to the Planning Commission, come back to you, and we can adopt something by a unanimous vote of the Board of Commissioners. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, Mr. Hartman. Any further public comment?
Dan Ainsworth from Genoa Lakes also, as I think most of you know. I'm generally for the intent of the code amendments, but I think you ought to define a couple of terms. You've brought in open space and unimproved areas into it in addition to golf courses and parks. So I'd like you to discuss what those really mean in a specific way. I've done a little bit of homework. There's an ordinance 763 from 1996, which defines common open space, and natural area. I just hope you can do some definition in the write-up here and in your discussions on the types of areas that we're really talking about here. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Ainsworth. Any further public comment?
Nancy Edmondson, Genoa Lakes resident, and some of you have seen me before. I am just here to reaffirm the intent of so many people in Douglas County who would like to see this kind of an ordinance written. And as a former teacher, I brought my visual aid. So it weighs about 10 pounds. These are all the responses that we have received since 2019 from parcel owners. Positive responses. We got no negative. We had a few questions, no negatives. And the residents are certainly overly in favor of this. I feel it also kind of dovetails with the Genoa County management plan. It's not a management plan, but it is the for growth under the natural resources, culture, and quality of life section. Of these responses who are interested in enacting this ordinance, Genoa Lakes 80.5% positive, the Ranch Course 42.4%, Sunridge 33.5%, Gardnerville Country Club 16%, Clear Creek, and there aren't that many houses there yet, of those 20%, Pioneer Trail Tract, which is not a golf course community, but they are near golf courses, 18%, and then we got individuals in Douglas County who said, oh, we hear about this petition, can we please sign? I encourage the county commissioners to send this on to the Planning Commission, and then we'll see what happens at that point. And thank you for listening to us.
You have done a lot of work. Thank you for your efforts. Is there any further public comment? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the board. Does the board have any questions or comments of Mr. Ritchie or in regard to this item?
Mr. Chairman, I have one clarification. Doug, I assume that the italic words are the ones that are going to be added to this? The italic words are the additions to it?
You go ahead, you have the floor.
Doug Ritchie with the District Attorney's Office. That's correct. As indicated in the ordinance, The items that are italicized and underlined is the new language, and the language that has a strike through it is going to be deleted or proposed to be deleted.
Any further questions or comments from the board? Commissioner Rice?
I have a question, sir. What action is required of the board at this time when it comes to this issue? Just authorize staff to bring the recommendations back to us in the form of an ordinance that we can approve or disapprove?
Chairman, if I may. Doug Ritchie with the District Attorney's Office. It's sufficient if the board doesn't have any further comments or direction. This will be brought forward to the Planning Commission. They're the experts on issues regarding common open space, how that fits within the code. Mr. Ainsworth's comments were well taken, but the Planning Commission will see how this fits within the larger Title 20 of the Douglas County Code, and then that will be brought back in the form of an ordinance for introduction to this board.
What motion would be appropriate at this time? Just
to direct staff to bring this forward as presented to the Planning Commission.
so moved.
Thank you, Mr.
Commissioner Gardner?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Rice. I share Mr. Ainsworth's concerns about the words open space. I feel like it's ambiguous and needs further definition. It's certainly open to interpretation, so I would hope that maybe the Planning Commission can look into massaging that a little bit and giving us some better direction there so that it's not open to subjectiveness by individuals. So otherwise, that's my comments. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, if we're ready for a motion, I move that we direct staff to bring these recommendations to the County Planning Commission and then bring it back to us for approval of an ordinance.
Second the motion.
We have a motion by Commissioner Rice, a second by Commissioner Noasad. Is there any further public comment before we take this to a vote? Is there any further comment or question by board members before we take it to a vote? See none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries 5-0. Thank you. For possible action, discussion to review the internal audit program activities for the fiscal year 2021 and approve the proposed fiscal year 21-22 internal audit program. Terry Willoughby, you have the floor.
Thank you, Terry Willoughby, for the record. So each year, our internal audit firm, Moss Adams, brings the proposed internal audit plan to the audit committee for review, and then we bring it back to the board. And we have Mark Staronka on Zoom, and I'll turn it over to him. He'll go over the plan for the next year and talk a little bit about what happened, the activities during this year. And this plan was approved by the audit committee at their June 28th meeting.
Thanks, Terry. Can you hear me okay? Terry, can you hear me?
We can hear you in the audience, yes.
Oh, cool. Thank you very much. Well, good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Mark Staranka, partner for Moss Adams. Thanks so much for having me. Sorry I'm not there in person. Next time, for sure, in person. So I'm going to share my screen. We'll do a very brief presentation of the FY 21-22 internal audit plan. As Terry mentioned, we bring this to you each year. That's part of the process. We work with management initially to define the components of the plan. We bring it to the audit committee for review, discussion, changes, and ultimately to bring it to you as a recommendation from the audit committee, which they did. Each year, we strive to try to touch different functions of the county so that if you look at this program, this internal audit program over a multi-year period, you're making your way around the county. So it's not, for example, just all things focused on accounting and finance. We're trying to address various functions within the county. And we're trying to do that in different ways. We're trying to do it in ways that help the county to reduce risks. We try to do it in ways that help the county strengthen internal controls and compliance. And we try to do it in ways that help the county enhance performance. And so we try each year to have sort of a complement of projects that touch different functions and touch different functions in different ways or different areas of focus, so that you, again, each year have some variety, but really over a multi-year period, again, are making our way around the county with the overall goal of everything that we're doing is to just help the county do what it does better. And sometimes that's, that's areas of improvement, whether it's more efficient and effective activities, policies, procedures, processes, it's strengthening controls, better segregation of duties, et cetera. It's wherever their opportunity resides to help the county, again, do what it does better. And actually, before I go forward, so each year, other inputs besides management, which is very important because we always want to get management's perspective of where they think there are opportunities for improvement in the audit committee. We've brought to you before you previously an enterprise risk assessment and an enterprise internal controls review. Those are both foundational documents that give us sort of a long-term perspective on areas that we think we should be focusing on, again, to help the county improve. We also get inputs from the ethics hotline, and those become considerations for, again, areas of focus for each year in the internal audit plan. And then even your grand jury. So for example, in 2019-2020 recommendations from the grand jury, they had recommended to the county that departments should be a focus of internal audits, sort of departments specifically, and you'll see that in our plan, as well as functions that cut across departments. So this year, like prior years, we've brought 3 projects to you, and maybe I'll just give you a little sense of sort of history to remind you of what we've addressed so far, even just in the past couple years. So in addition to the enterprise risk assessment and the enterprise internal controls review, we did a pretty robust policy review, which really has a focus on helping you to reduce risks. So thinking of the risk bucket, we've had internal controls testing relative to cash handling in inventory, which are 2 areas of priority focus from the internal controls review. We're already providing compliance related work relative to the CARES Act. You just approved an item for the ARPA funds, similar compliance work. And as well as we've done compliance related work on what's called PCI, or payment card data security. And then in terms of performance, we're currently in the process of conducting library performance review. And I think you might recall recently presenting to you a permitting operational study. And so we've been sort of touching again these different facets of the county in different ways over the past few years. So this year's recommended slate from internal audit management and the audit committee is first a fixed asset internal controls testing. So this is very complementary to the inventory controls testing that we recently completed, where the inventory is looking at things that you're expensing, items that you're expensing, so smaller items. Fixed assets are looking at things that you're capitalizing or depreciating, like buildings and vehicles and large equipment. So those these two sort of areas of focus go hand in hand. So this is a nice sort of follow-on activity from the internal controls, the inventory internal controls testing. The second one, P cards internal controls testing. This is a very common area to look at some point in a sort of an internal audit program. I might mention that procurement and purchasing, of which P cards are an element of, or one of the, I'll say, priority areas of focus from the internal controls review that we performed. And so it makes sense as this an area to take a look at. And then we wanted to introduce something that was kind of on the departmental performance. And so we had asked for input and got that feedback that maybe the airport would be a nice place to focus on an operational review, especially because those are contracted services. And I might add that where our clients, cities, counties are contracting out sort of significant services, those are always a good place to take a look in terms of an operational performance review to make sure that the vendor, the partner in that case, is not only performing well for the county, but performing compliantly to the contract. And we actually also find that there's typically opportunities to enhance or strengthen the contract so that next time that is up for renewal, maybe you have some additional tools at your disposal based on a review like this. So those are the three projects. The fourth one is kind of just our ongoing program management. And then I'm just going to conclude with showing how this fits your annual budget for internal audit services are $110,000. Every year we propose a program within that amount. So just showing here that these proposed projects do fit within your budget and kind of the generally anticipated timing of when we would perform these over the course of the fiscal year that we're now in, fiscal year 21-22. So with that, I'd be pleased to answer any questions you might have, and thanks for the opportunity to present.
Thank you, Mark. Are there any questions from the audience? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the board. The board have any questions or comments of Mark? All right, seeing none, can we get a motion from the board?
Seeing no public comment, Mr. Chair, I will move for the acceptance of the internal audit program activities for fiscal year 2020-2021 and approve the proposed fiscal year 21-22 internal audit program.
Second the motion.
We have a motion by Commissioner Gardner, a second by Commissioner Noasad. Any further discussion from the board in regard to this? Commissioner Rice?
No, sir.
Okay, we'll take it to a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Nay. The motion carries 5-0. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Ms. Willoughby. Ms. Willoughby, don't go away.
Thanks very much.
We'll be moving to item number 5 for possible action. Discussion to approve the revised fiscal year 2021-22 to 2025-26 capital improvement plan as presented. Ms. Willoughby, you have the floor.
Terry Willoughby for the record. We first brought this to you on April 27th as part of the budget process. It came to my attention that there were projects that were submitted to outside agencies, such as the Federal Aviation Administration and RTC, that were not included in our capital improvement program, but were submitted to these agencies. We are not making any changes in the budget or any in the current year projects. These are all future year projects, but we wanted to make sure that our capital improvement program was mirroring what was submitted to those other agencies. So there's no financial impact at this time. I'd be happy to answer any questions. And there's road projects that were added and airport. Those are the only two projects that were modified or added.
Thank you, Ms. Willoughby. Is there any comment or question from the public? Seeing none, bringing it back to the board. Any comments or questions from the board?
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Gardner?
Thank you, Ms. Willoughby. I appreciate you doing this. My question is on the projects that are listed out in the future, if we should experience revenues over and above what we are expecting, it is possible to bring some of these capital projects forward from those years. Is that correct?
Terry Libby for the record. Yes, this is the beginning of the 5-year program, so you'll see this each year during the budget process. And of course, if there's additional revenue available during the year, we could certainly amend the plan. But at this time, that's the recommendation.
Thank you.
Any further questions or comments from the board? Do we have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the revised capital improvement plan as presented. Hello.
I'll second that one.
We have a motion by Commissioner Rice, a second by Commissioner Noasad. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. The motion carries 5-0. Thank you, Ms. Willoughby. Moving on to Public Works, item number 6 for possible action. Discussion to adopt Resolution 2021-074, a resolution regarding the placement of traffic control devices on Deer Run Court and authorize the installation of no parking signs on Deer Run Court per the request of the Tahoe Douglas Fire Protection District. Mr. Erb, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the record, John Erb, Douglas County Public Works. Thank you. So this resolution was brought forward by the request of the Tahoe Douglas Fire Department. Deer Run Court is up off of State Route 208 Kingsbury grade, 207 Kingsbury grade. It is approximately 22 feet wide with rolled curb, and beyond the curb is landscaping. The road serves, as you enter off of Kingsbury, to the left is USA Bank, and they do have their own on-site parking. And then it serves the back parking access to the Red Hut Cafe. And then at the cul-de-sac, there are 2 separate apartment buildings, and they both have their own on-site parking. It started last year, about in the fall. People's overflow parking started parking on the shoulders of this roadway. When you get cars on both sides, it limits the roadway to one vehicle either going in or coming out at any time. So that was the request, is for fire or ambulance service access to the back apartment buildings. If somebody was coming out, the fire department would have to wait for that vehicle to clear before they were able to enter. So that's why there's this request to have no parking. With that, I'll take any questions.
We'll open this up to the audience for public comment. Is there any public comment or questions from the audience?
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Natalie Yanish. I'm the chair of the Kingsbury General Improvement District Board, and I was just curious as to who would be responsible for the signage that would be put into place on this road, because this is a road that is maintained by KGAD. But we're always open to working with Douglas County, so whatever your decision is, I'd be happy to report back to our board, and perhaps we could come up with some sort of arrangement for who's responsible for the signage. Thank you.
Mr. Erb, go ahead.
I'm very willing to work with KGID in regards to this. I have it in my budget, a sign program where we can install the signs for this first go-round. So, if that answers the question.
Question? Yes, thank you. Okay, thank you. Are there any further comments, questions from the public? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the board. Commissioner Rice, this is up in your neighborhood. What do you?
It certainly is, and it is a problem that I would be very happy to see go away. The intersection that I keep hitting that doggone thing. I can't say what I want to say. Anyway, the Red Hut is on one corner, and it's a very popular breakfast and lunch spot. And the bank is on the other corner, and they have their own on-site parking. The problem is when they try to come out of their on-site parking, when there are cars parked on both sides of the street, we've had many near collisions at that location, and a fire truck couldn't get through if it had to. Well, if it goes fast enough, it can go anywhere. But this is a resolution to a problem that has been ongoing and exacerbated. That's close enough. It's been amplified by the number of people coming into Lake Tahoe from our friends in California, down in the Sacramento area, and coming up there to their favorite breakfast spot and parking and completely clogging their run. And with the senior housing that's back there, they do occasionally have ambulance runs, and I'm glad to see this problem go away. And thank you, Mr. Herb, for finally getting this done. And are we ready for a motion?
Commissioner Rice, you have the floor.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we adopt Resolution 2021-R-074 as presented.
I'll second that, Mr. Chair.
We have a motion by Commissioner Rice, a second by Commissioner Gardner. Is there any further comment from the audience or questions? Bringing it back to the board. Any further questions or comments from the board? See none. Take it to a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. All those opposed, motion carries 5-0. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Mr. Erb.
Mr. Chair, I wanted to, before you leave, Mr. Erb, I just wanted to take a moment again to thank you for your quick response down on Penrod Lane in South County in the stormwater and road hazard mitigation that took place a couple weeks ago and continues to take place, correcting those issues and culverts and all of that. So thank you both for your division and the stormwater division as well. Again, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Erb, as long as we're dispensing accolades, Manhattan out in the ranchos looks good. Just got done on that one, didn't you?
Which one? Sorry.
Manhattan?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. I don't know how I ever got that name, but that's the name of the road. I believe there's also a Manhattan, Nevada, a town. Can anybody? Anyway, I think there is. It's not much. Okay, continuing on, community development. For presentation only. Presentation from the community development staff and discussion on the 2022 Community Development Block Grant, CDBG program, summary of past performance and outreach to the community for the year 2022 cycle. Mr. Booth, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is Sam Booth, Deputy Director with Community Development. I'm going to turn time over to Lucille Rayo in our Planning Division of Community Development. Lucille has taken the task of doing much of the work on the Community Development Block Program, Grant Block Program, for the past few years. And so with that, Lucille.
Thank you, Mr. Booth. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the record, Lucille Rayo, Community Development. Like Sam said, every year we come before you. There's monies that are granted to 15 counties and 12 cities in the state of Nevada. Every year there's a new grant cycle, so this is for the 2022 grant cycle. Approximately $3.3 million for the counties and cities and counties that I stated for this cycle. We won't know till March what the actual figure is. We have received monies in the past. It's in your packet. It's page 647. So far, to date, Douglas County has received $4,109,818.73 in community development block grant money. Every project has to meet a national objective. One of the three national objectives. So the national objectives are benefit 51% or more of low to moderate income persons, aid in the prevention or elimination of slum or blight, or address a recent urgent community development need. It's a federal program, but the state Governor's Office of Economic Development actually manages it. And then the counties, each county or city has their own management within that. So to better align the CDBG program with the state of Nevada's plan for economic development, the governor is focused on statewide job creation, rural economic development, and overall business attraction. The Governor's Office of Economic Development intends to use more CDBG dollars for economic development, better align with the program. So basically what they're looking for is bigger projects, more expensive projects, less projects, but bigger projects. The projects have to benefit residents in a particular area, a low to moderate income area, and mostly in a primarily residential area. How do we know if it's a low to moderate income area? HUD has provided data through the census, and also a survey can be conducted. So some of the limited clientele that the money should be focused on are children who are abused, people who are homeless, the severely disabled, battered spouses, illiterate adults, people living with AIDS, farm workers, and migrant workers. Some funding ideas, reconstruction of public facilities, rehabilitation of privately owned non-residential buildings, rehabilitation of common area of residential structures with more than one dwelling unit, microenterprises for low to moderate income owners, job training and employment services. So the activity for a project must pass two tests. It has to meet one national objective, and it has to be an eligible activity. Some examples are on this slide. So we have housing services that would include housing for counseling, energy, auditing, loan processing, assistance to institutions of higher education, microenterprise assistance, home ownership assistance. And then there's other categories. So within public facilities, for infrastructure improvements, neighborhood facilities such as parks and playgrounds, ADA accessibility. Examples of that might be repairing sidewalks, handrails, any kind of ADA accessibility in a building, a public building. Anything like that could qualify. Also within economic development, the acquisition, construction, reconstruction, rehab, or installation of commercial or industrial buildings, structures, or other real property, equipment, and/or improvements, assisting a not-for-profit business, providing economic development services in connection with CDBG, job training, placement of jobs, or rehabilitation of publicly and privately owned commercial structures, planning and capacity grants, so determining a community need, and then implementing a CDBG-assisted project. So if you apply for a planning grant, it has to lead to a project. So for example, the food closet, they received a planning grant first. Then they received money to help build. They raised money, and then they also got some grant money to help build it and furnish it. So that would be an example of planning and capacity building. Eligible activities, so job training, crime prevention, health services, childcare, substance abuse, fair housing counseling, energy conservation, welfare service, recreational services, and down payment assistance. So it's a wide range of areas. It's just a matter of connecting economic development and job creation with one of these projects. That's pretty much the basis of it. So they don't just give you grant money because it's a specific need. It has to all be tied together. Housing activities, so low to moderate income housing, improving permanent residential structures, slum and blight. I can't say that we have too much of that as far as slum and blight. Slum and blight is a hard one to receive grant money for. Even the folks at CDBG pretty much say it's kind of hard to find grant money or agree to give grant money for slum and blight. It has to be a specific area that's extremely blighted. So what's the timeline? So the next up would be I would come again. I have to do part of the process is I have to come to 3 public meetings. So we have to let the public know about these the grant money. So I'm here today. I'll be back on the 19th. Then I'm going to hold a public meeting for an informational meeting on August 26th. Then by October 15th, any applications that come forward have to be entered into the Zoom grants online. And then hopefully we'll have projects that I can present to you on November 18th, and that's where you will decide on what projects you think could be or should be moved forward, hopefully to be awarded money and the projects can move forward. So in February, I have a deadline of all applications in by February 9th so that I can review everything and get everything over to the CDBG office in Carson City by February 18th. So what are our next steps? Any public input, any public comment? I'll be here for the second public hearing, as I said, in August again. I'll be holding an informational meeting. So just got to get the word out there, get people talking and thinking, get some ideas. Contact me for that, and we'll get some things going. So questions? No questions.
Yes, I have one.
Great.
Lucille, would you be, this is just a hypothetical, a business or a restaurant or something of that nature, would you be personally available to visit that if they had questions about something that they were looking at improving?
Absolutely. If someone has any questions, they can call me. If they want me to visit them, I'd be happy to do so.
Although this presentation only, does the board have any questions or comments? Yeah. Lucille, don't go away. You're up next, too. So are you, Sam. For presentation only, introduction to ordinance 2021-1586, amending the Douglas County Code Title 18, Appendix C, the Gardnerville Township boundary by annexing approximately 29 acres adjacent to the existing boundaries for the town of Gardnerville. Pursuant to section 18.01.010, the area to the annexed, the area next to the annexed area is APN number 1220-11-001-077. First reading. Mr. Booth, you have the floor.
Thank you once again, Mr. Chair. This is Sam Booth, Deputy Director of Community Development. As the title and the recommended motion in your packet today reads, this is just a first reading and introduction of this ordinance. So all that's required today is to read that title into the record, and as you have just done, Mr. Chair, so appreciate that. Just to go a little further, Title 18, as we mentioned in the title there, has the annexation procedures. for the unincorporated towns within the county. In order to initiate an annexation, one of the ways of doing that is is for the town board to pass a resolution recommending annexation, and then to pass that on and make an application to community development. And then it's community development staff that brings the ordinance forward to you all. So that was done on June 1st. The Gardnerville Town Board passed Resolution 2021-003 to modify the town boundaries. And they made the application to community development. Also, according to Title 18, those applications are brought forward to the commission at least every 3 months in January, April, July, and October. And so that's why this annexation is before you at your meeting in July. And I would also just add, Mr. Chairman, that we will be back for second reading at your August 5th meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Booth. Are there any questions from the board?
I had a question, Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Tarkanian?
and I'm not sure if this goes to you, Doug, or to you, Mr. Booth. The letter that was from the district attorney, see that it was in the packet? Am I referencing this correctly or not? It was in the it was in the supplemental packet. The district attorney was against the annexation, is that correct? Thank you. It was in the supplemental.
Mr. Ritchie?
I guess, well, I could rephrase the question. I mean, we're going to hear this again, I assume vote on it on the next meeting. That's correct, Mr. Booth?
Yes, that's correct.
So, I mean, we don't have to have an answer now, but my question sort of is, if the district attorney's providing us with a letter saying he doesn't feel it should be approved and the reasons for that, I was just wondering what would be the rationale for us to approve it?
Chairman, if I may.
Commissioner Ritchie, Chairman Ritchie, DA, Assistant DA.
Thank you, Chairman. Doug Ritchie with the Douglas County District Attorney's Office. Thank you. I had an opportunity to review the letter. That letter is from one of the deputies in the Civil Division in response to another attorney, the town's council. The process for annexation is called out in the code. The town is free to, by resolution, ask this board to annex, and the board can deliberate and take that action if it so wishes. Generally, there's an annexation occurs, as pointed out in the letter, when services are provided by the town. That's why there's an annexation. In this particular case, it doesn't appear that any town services will be provided to these residents, at least at this time. Obviously, at the public hearing, there'll be more information provided. The town's council and maybe representatives from the town can explain why they want the annexation or what services may be provided. At this time, it's just the presentation of the introduction of the ordinance.
Okay, thank you. I didn't know, I just thought if there's no basis for us, we could vote it down now and move on, but you're saying this is just a presentation. We don't have the right to do any voting today, is that correct?
That is correct, Commissioner Tarkanian. This is for presentation only. It's not for action. There's no vote. The board is, as the chairman correctly pointed out, a time where the members of the board can ask questions, clarification, but this is not the time nor the public hearing for the board to take action.
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Rice?
I have a question, Sam. Have the people that live in this area been queried as to whether or not they wish to be annexed?
Thank you, Commissioner Rice. This is Sam Booth for the record. So the 29 acres subject to the annexation is currently undeveloped. There was an approved project on this site. So as of right now, there's just one property owner that owns the property. To your question, I think was, has he been queried? I I believe he's been notified by now just of the posting. There may be a representative here today. I know that the representative for the developer appeared at the town board when they discussed this item. But I don't know, I think maybe more to the point of your question, as Commissioner Tarkanian called out, I think the civil DA pointed out that the property owner is not asking to be annexed. This is initiated by the town of Gardnerville. And so the property owner is not asking the town to be annexed at this point and believes that the town is not providing services. And the town believes they are, and that's why they initiated the application.
Mr. Chairman?
Thank you. Commissioner Nosad?
Yeah, question, Mr. Booth. Has there been any move toward developing that land?
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner. This is Sam Booth again. There was just recently, this year, a special use permit approved for the site by the Planning Commission. And there's a design review application that's still pending with the Community Development Department, essentially pending the outcome of the annexation and some questions that are still outlying about the services to be provided and some of the details of how that design would move forward. So they have entitlements on the property, they have an approved special use permit, but no actual development has occurred on the property yet. They have a few permits to finalize with our office, and the next step or stages would be site improvement permit and then building and construction permits.
Can we assume that once a shovel is put into the earth that Gardnerville would have to supply the services?
Sam Booth again for the record, Commissioner. I think that question just comes back to whether or not the property is annexed into the town of Gardnerville.
Sounds like chicken and egg to me.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Gardner?
So I have one question, Mr. Booth. The question I have is the noticing aspect of an annexation is residences within, what is it, 250 feet of the proposed annexation? What is the distance there? And I guess my question then would be, are there any residences within that area that need to be or have been noticed in regards to the proposed annexation? And I really wasn't trying to stump the planner here.
Commissioner Gardner, I do not have in front of me right now what that noticing radius is. I will say on packet 680, we included the names of the property owners that were notified. I would point out, this is different than our noticing radius we have for larger development applications, the boundary and distance from the property, and the noticing provisions for annexation essentially come from NRS, but there's also a description for it in Title 18. But the requirement for notification here as well is for certified letter to be sent to these property owners. And so the Community Development Department sent a certified letter to these property owners here.
Thank you.
Mr. Booth, this could be referred to as the Perry Project?
That's correct, Chairman Ingalls. The property is owned by Mr. Perry. The project that's subject to this site is Chuck Hathoot. That's the developer for that project.
Okay, a little bit of backstory here. This was approved by the board last year, Commissioner Rice, sometime last year. Yeah. And then it went before the Township of Gardnerville, and they approved it. And that's where it stood until now. So this is how it got there. Thank you. Any further questions from the board? Seeing none, thank you. This will be coming back and we'll be seeing more of it, so it's just a brief introduction to what you'll be seeing in the not too distant future. For possible action, Mr. Booth, don't go anywhere. For possible action, this is item 9. Discussion on the Community Development Department's fee schedule for Planning and Building and Engineering Division, including a comparison of fees with surrounding jurisdictions. Mr. Booth, you have the floor.
Thank you once again, and good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. This is Sam Booth, Deputy Director of Community Development, for the record. I'm here today after a request by the board, I believe a month or so ago, that there was a motion made for staff to review fees from surrounding jurisdictions and compare those to community development's fees that we have today, and to bring back for a discussion with you all this afternoon. So that's what we have done, and in your packet, I believe starting on page 683, I have some items that we have submitted. What the department did as a part of this analysis was to analyze those jurisdictions just immediately surrounding us or most like us in size or operation. And so those 3 that we were most readily able to find information from, and again, I believe are most similar to our community development department and the county itself, is Carson City, Lyon County, and then Washoe County is who we compared ourselves to. So there's a couple pages there. The first one shows planning and engineering permit fee comparison. The next page shows building permit fee comparison. And then backup support items I have to that are just some of our fee schedules for the department. If you look through those items, you can see that Douglas County generally is above Carson City and Lyon County with the cost of our fees for community development. There are a few areas where Douglas County is the highest out of Douglas, Carson, Lyon, and Washoe. Our major variance fee is the highest out of the 4. Our major design review fee is also the highest out of the 4. There's also a few areas where we're a bit lower or maybe opportunity to raise some fees. Our tentative subdivision map fee, while it's higher than Carson and Lyon, and you can see that there, Lyon County's $3,000 base fee, Carson City's $3,500 for a base fee, Douglas County's $4,428, but Washoe County, if you look at them on the far right, they're at $7,118, or they charge a bit more for sewer and water in those subdivisions, and that's $8,712. So they are quite a bit higher than us on the tentative subdivision map, and that's the same story for the final subdivision map and parcel map, that Washoe County's a bit higher, but generally we are higher than Carson and Lyon. Most of the other fees that we have there for planning and engineering are at least close to some of the other jurisdictions, but I would say probably Washoe County is who we're most aligned with in fees, and again, Lyon County and Carson City are a bit lower. And with the building permit fee comparison, I think we're on par with our surrounding cities and counties as well for building fees. I've spoken with Tim Davis, our building official. He believes, and you can see at the top of that page, that the road tax fee that's charged with a building permit is lower for Douglas County, and there might be opportunity to raise that fee. We weren't able to find Carson City's data for that, but it's $1,000 for Lyon County and it's $4,600 for Washoe County, so quite a bit higher. The school tax, park tax, were pretty much right in line with surrounding jurisdictions, as well as some of the other fees that we have in there. Other comments that Mr. Davis gave me about the building department would be that he believes there may be opportunity to raise fees for revisions, incidental fees, plan revisions, or reinspection fees, or after-hours inspection fees. Also for temporary certificate, of occupancy permits. I believe that's it. He mentioned that we have a technology fee. Of course we do. You can see that on the first page. There's a 4% technology fee that's applied to all permits that come through community development. I think Tim believes just that we have been utilizing quite a bit of technology, and he just mentioned that there may be an opportunity to look at whether or not that fee could be increased. But again, just to recap, generally we're on par with our surrounding jurisdictions. Few areas where we're higher, a few areas where we're lower. As far as the engineering fees, I should mention that. I spoke to Jeremy Hutchings, our county engineer. He has reviewed the fees, the engineering fees, to compare them to other jurisdictions, and he believes Douglas County is on the high side for our site improvement permits. However, Carson and Lyon recoup their time a little bit differently than we do. Douglas County, for a site improvement fee, charges most of the fee up front with the plan review, and then when you're ready to come in and actually pay for your permit is a bit lower of a fee. Other jurisdictions charge a cheaper fee up front and a higher fee on the back end. But I think just in discussions with Jeremy that he believes that that is working out well for the department right now. That was changed in 2018 with a resolution the board approved. Essentially that if the engineering department puts in most of their work early on to review those plans and permits, if someone backs out and decides not to actually pick up the permit, we've already recouped our fee by charging that higher amount with the plan review fee. And I'm trying to see if he gave me any other comments to pass on to you, but I believe that's it. In the packet, I noted that historically the department has reviewed fees every 2 to 3 years and increased fees across the board for the department based on the CPI adjustments. Or based on the CPI. That hasn't been done since 2018 and wasn't done last year due to COVID. We weren't really looking at raising fees at that time. So I just noted again in the packet that the West Region CPI has increased 4.7% over the previous 12 months. That is a very large jump. The last rate raise in 2018 was 3.2% was the raise across the board. Beyond that, I do have Mr. Dallaire was unable to be with us today. He's out of town. But Tom thinks that long term the department can look at doing a fee study and a rate study, a comprehensive rate study that would look at all of the employees and the cost of the employees with the department, and compare that to the fee structure that we have, and in order to align those fees, our revenue and our expenses exactly aligned together. I believe Terry Willoughby, did this at the previous county she worked for, and she sent Tom and I some good information on rate study or the firm that was used at her previous jurisdiction, and Tom and I have looked into that. We'd need to determine the full burden rate and the billing rate for each employee, the time that each employee spends on reviewing each application and each type of application. So that could be a pretty large impact on staff to take the time for us to analyze that. So if we were able to find an outside firm to assist with that, I think it would save a lot of staff time. Tom did reach out to that firm that Terry suggested. They said it's typically about a 4 to 5 month process. On the high side, an estimate would be $30,000 to $40,000 for an audit of the fees and staff time. Ultimately, Tom believes it would improve efficiency of the department in determining the actual costs of the review that we're doing, and give the public the assurance that, you know, what they're paying for is the time that they're getting to review things. But I think we all agree that that's a long-term vision. That's something that we would either need to amend the budget to include, or to include in next year's budget, and probably some more information we need to seek there. So again, this was just to present some information to the board today and to hear what your comments are on what your thoughts are on our fees, so we have some direction to move forward.
Are there any questions or comments from the audience?
Virginia Starrett. I was pleased to see item 9 on today's agenda. While a similar report was presented to the previous board, I held out little hope that any action would follow to add much-needed information essential to managing residential development in our county wisely. My view is that while a comparison of fees charged by other counties throughout Nevada is interesting, it is irrelevant to the goal of making sure development pays its fair share towards the long-term costs of maintaining infrastructure here. I would venture to say that every county mentioned in the report has a huge shortfall of funds to spend on essential infrastructure needs. Carson City, for example, is $200 million short. 3 philosophies dominate concerning residential development. 1, that development is inevitable and is always an economic positive. 2, development is inevitable and can be an economic positive if carefully managed. 3, development does not pay for itself and should be allowed only when absolutely essential. None of these has been explored adequately so that any of the 3 statements can be labeled absolutely true or false. So what I hope this board will do is commission a study to establish how much infrastructure spending the county currently would face if it addressed all of its current infrastructure needs, and from that determine what the actual cost to the county is when a residence is added through development. At that point, I believe the question of whether residential development pays for itself or not, or is beneficial or not, can be answered, and new policies and fees can be put in place if required. If it turns out that the fees necessary would be too high to attract development, then the last philosophy, development does not pay for itself, would need to be elevated in importance in how the county goes about planning for development. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Starrett. Any further comments from the audience? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the board. Any comments or questions from the board? Commissioner Gardner?
Mr. Chair, thank you. Mr. Bethea, I brought this forward a couple of months ago, asked for this, and I appreciate you bringing this forward and giving us a comparison here. The one-page 684 building permit fee comparison, we are we're 50% of what Lyon County charges on the road tax, and grossly underrated from Washoe County. So I just wanted to make that one observation on this particular report. I've heard the comments as well from the public about whether or not development pays for itself. And the real question is, does it? While this particular study accounts for our cost of our employees in the permitting and reviewing process of development, it doesn't address the increases that we are going to experience in fire protection needs, additional fire protection needs, additional sheriff's needs, expansion of the JLEX Center, all the other infrastructural needs that we encounter as a county when we have development. It's my observation that, you know, when our current JLEX Center was built in 1980, we had 19,000 residents. We now have, I believe the census will show us slightly over 50,000. And perhaps if we had had some development impact fees during those 40 years, we would not be trying to figure out right now where we were going to get the money to expand or build a new judicial and law enforcement center. It doesn't address the impact that and the damage that's done to heavy roads, heavy loads of construction trucks going across county roads and the long-term impact on that. It addresses, once again, our costs in doing the review process, but it doesn't address the impact that the development is going to have, as I see. We have, whenever you know, we go to the schools, and the schools are saying we have a declining population in the schools, and so we don't need any more schools. Well, just because we may not need any, you know, we're having a declining population in a particular school because of a different area and maybe the residents are getting older. When we build 4,000 homes out here along Hayborn and Buckeye and Muller over the next 15, 20 years, even though it's going to be stretched out that long period of time, that still doesn't address, while that area may not need, according to our school district, another school, then that means that we're going to still have the requirements of transporting those students to schools, and that additional heavy traffic on those roads can have a tremendous impact on our ability to maintain those roads. So those are my concerns, that I think this is all well and good, and I really appreciate this coming forward, but I really believe that our planning department needs to take a look at development of another process to cause development, and perhaps it could be called development and road impact fee schedules or something of that nature. So you know, so that we're planning in advance, we're looking forward, and we're making sure that we're going to have those funds necessary in our hands to mitigate those issues going forward. So that's just a comment to the planning department, okay? And what I would hope that you might take a look at looking at other jurisdictions, seeing what they do, and if they don't do anything, that doesn't mean we shouldn't. That's an important aspect also. Okay, just because they don't, that's their issue. Our issue is working with the funds that we have on an annual basis and what we can do to mitigate that. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Gardner. Any further questions or comments from the board? And Mr. Booth, I have a couple of questions. Now, when somebody comes in and they apply for a building permit, and do you generate an invoice for X amount of dollars?
Yes, we do, Chairman.
All right. So that invoice goes into an accounts receivable account that's tracked?
Yes. First, we have our Acela permitting software. So when we take that application in, we enter some information in about the property owner, address, those type of things, and we generate a record in our system for that, and then we'll invoice that record. So it's there. The applicant or property owner will pay that invoice, and then that's when that would move along, and those funds will take through to the finance department, where it would come in as accounts receivable. Yes.
So you track this invoice and the payment closely. There's no outstanding balance?
That's correct. I mean, generally, it depends on the type of permits that we have or that we're issuing. But yes, in order to pick up a building permit, you have to pay for that building permit before you can pick it up.
Has this ever been audited by the outside auditors?
I believe so. I'd have to defer to the county manager, assistant county manager. We did have an audit of our processes just a few years ago. And I know that Terry Willoughby, the CFO, looks very closely at each of our finances and as we pass those along. But I've only been with the department for 2.5 years, so I can't speak historically when the last audit was.
Ms. Davison, are you aware of this?
Mr. Chairman, I could not, Jennifer Davidson, for the record, I could not answer the question as to when the last time a specific audit specific to these invoices would be done. It's certainly a work plan that we could add to the internal audit review. The process permitting and efficiency study did not include a specific review of the invoicing of this department. I do know that there's routine spot checking of invoicing and cash handling procedures and things have been reviewed for this department.
Okay. Previously, Moss Adams gave a presentation and they discussed some procedural audits in regard to things that were just outside of the financial department. And so this may be something that we want to have done. Thank you. Mr. Ritchie.
Thank you, Chairman. Doug Ritchie with the District Attorney's Office. Commissioner Gardner makes a great point on page 684 of the packet. The fees that community development charge must be related to the services they provide, basically like a business. They charge for the services they provide. Under Nevada law, they cannot charge more than the cost to provide it, otherwise it's an impermissible tax. When we talk about infrastructure, many of the things that we typically think of as infrastructure, community development doesn't have control over. For instance, water, sewer, critical infrastructure that allows development. Community development doesn't have any control over those fees. Those are set by the water purveyor, the sewer provider, and generally the cost, the impact on the system is covered through connection fees. And those are set by that agency. So it might be MGSD, KGID, Indian Hills GID. And as far as particular revenues for what the county controls, which is roads, which is an issue, that's a Public Works and Board of County Commissioners issue, not so much community development. For instance, road maintenance is primarily through gas tax and diesel tax. As indicated on page 684, several of those, school tax, parks tax, those are taxes which our citizens are generally averse to, and this board has been averse to. But those are the revenue sources for the impacts for these type of activities. So just to be clear, when we're talking about community development and their fees, it doesn't cover all infrastructure. It covers just the services that they provide as they do plan reviews, things like that, and the different fees that this board may elect to impose. I hope that clarifies the issue that you raised on page 684.
Right. I have a question in that regard, Mr. Ritchie. I know that we charge, for instance, a park tax of $1,000 for every new home that's built.
Right.
And that is controlled by our Community Services Department for the future building of parks. So if we can charge a tax to a developer for a new home, to accumulate funds to build a new park,
right,
why can't we then impose fees for identification of other services that we are going to have to be providing for our community?
Chairman, if I may. Doug Ritchie with the District Attorney's Office. That is a great question. It goes to the heart of the issue. And the short answer is because the Nevada legislature has allowed it pursuant to specific NRS provisions, park tax, schools tax, things like that, or fees.
Okay, so, and then let's jump up to the number 2 item then, or the school tax. Is that school tax, that $1,600, that's not, is that designed to pay for, I'm not sure what that's designed to pay for. Is that, if there's a new school going into that development, is that to pay for the or anticipated costs of transportation of the students? But I don't understand what that's for then, I guess.
Right. I'd have to look at the exact NRS provision, but generally it's for the construction of new schools because of the theoretically more children coming into the district. But I'd have to look at the specific NRS provision, but it's tied to it. Without looking at the statute, I doubt it goes down to providing gas for their buses to transport. It's generally to construct and maintain schools.
Okay, so this board has also indicated a reluctance for development agreements, right? Because development agreements involve specific requirements on a developer by this board in order to approve that development. So in order for us going forward to require a development to, for instance, build a new school, build a new fire department, contribute to a new JLEC center, all of those would, because they're not in code, would have to be wrapped into a development agreement before we could approve, before we could get those fees or those costs for the mitigation of that infrastructure. Is that a true statement?
Doug Ritchie with the District Attorney's Office again. That's a great point. Generally, there are different fees that are allowed, impact fees, for lack of a better word, and Sam Booth can correct me, but that's directly tied to that development. But a development agreement, it's because it's an arm's length transaction, it's basically whatever the parties will agree to. So under a development agreement, a developer could agree, although I'm not required to, I'm going to contribute, say, 10 cents per square foot for everything I develop to help contribute towards, say, the JLEC Center or some other project that the developer believes would be an amenity or benefit for the development. But you're right. Short answer is yes. Development agreement, you could negotiate whatever you felt would be a good thing.
That would be a condition of approval of development.
Well, it wouldn't be a condition of development. It would be under a development agreement, which is a voluntary contractual relationship. A condition of development is something that's imposed by the county per our regulations, and the developer has to satisfy it in order to meet our code requirements. And again, I'll defer to Sam on that because he knows more about Title 20 than I do.
Well, I mean, the problem, of course, with a development agreement is that it can be long-term, and that obviously has caused us heartburn as well, because we have some development agreements that have been out there for 30 plus years, and I know that I'm certainly not of a desire to go down that route. So, and I've kind of heard that from fellow commissioners as well over the last 7 months. So, anyways, I appreciate the information and the clarification, and that was important. Yeah, thank you for the clarification.
Thank you.
Commissioner Gardner, I think that what you're talking about is in general equivalent to a California Mello-Roos tax on developments, because we have a fixed charge when the development goes in and then it stops. But the cost of public services, roads and things of that nature continue on, and plus inflation. So it's different. It's than just that one charge for the development fees. Mr. Booth, since the last increase, which was, I think you said it was 2018, I remember that. Do you remember that? Commissioner Rice, we were up at the lake and we looked at this and it was like, yeah, they hadn't raised the rates in years. It was kind of a shock. And so since 2018, we've had a few years with inflation. Would it be appropriate at this time to just raise these rates 5% across the board? What do you think?
That's a tough question, Chairman. But I did indicate that, yeah, typically or historically, the department has raised our rates based on the CPI, and that the CPI, at least between the last 12 months, has increased 4.7%. Personally, I think that's a very large increase. I also point out in here that it hasn't increased, CPI hasn't increased that much since 2008. And I think, why you're seeing that was a 12-month look back. So obviously, inflation wasn't doing too well, a year ago, and we're seeing a lot of inflation now, so there's a big increase there. Probably was the same case back in 2008 because of the economy then. Our last increase was about 3.2%. So I think somewhere between 3.2 and 4.7% seems acceptable. But of course, that's not for me to make that decision. That's for the board.
No, we understand that, and we appreciate your input. Does the board have any further questions or comments? I would propose a motion that we do across-the-board rate increase of 5% on all fees at this time. Any discussion on that?
Chairman, if I may.
Mr. Ritchie?
Because your rates are set by resolution, it might be more appropriate to give direction to staff to prepare a resolution to bring back and be agendized so the public can know what the board is about to do and comment on that.
Thank you, sir. Would anybody care to make a motion requesting the board or staff to review this and come back with a 5% increase?
Mr. Chair, I'll attempt this, okay? So I move that we accept the Community Development Department's fee schedule for planning, building, engineering divisions, including a comparison of fees with the surrounding jurisdictions, with the direction to staff to bring back forward a resolution to raise the fees by 5% overall.
Second motion?
We have a motion by Commissioner Gardner, a second by Commissioner Noasad. Are there any further comments from the public? Seeing none, any further comments, questions in regard to this motion from the board?
We're going to vote.
Okay.
I have it on to vote.
We have a motion, we have a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
The motion carries 4-1. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
No.
Thank you, Mr. Booth, for your presentation. Does the board want to take a break, or do you want to keep on going and get it?
One more thing.
Okay. All right. Commissioners. For presentation only, report updates from county commissions and members concerning the various boards and/or commissions that they may be members of, liaison to, or meetings, functions they have attended.
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Rice.
As you are aware, over the last weekend, the Century 21 golf tournament came to Lake Tahoe. And once again, it was a rousing success. This year, much more so than last year, because nobody was allowed to attend last year. And the event raises thousands of dollars for local charities that is donated to groups here in Douglas County, as well as those in the rest of the Lake Tahoe region. And the LTVA received thousands of dollars in free advertising Lake Tahoe and visiting Tahoe responsibly, which has become a bit of a problem. And I think that the LTVA and the Century 21 committee who puts this on are to be congratulated for putting on a really class act event.
We had an opportunity to attend, and it was very impressive and a lot of fun. Any further comments? Commissioner Gardner?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will echo Mr. Rice's and Mr. Engel's comments regarding the golf tournament. I had an opportunity to participate, or not participate. They wouldn't want to see me participate in that event, but I had an opportunity to visit it. You don't want to see my golf game. But anyways, so I also congratulate them on a great event. I would inform, as most of you are probably experiencing, all the boards and commissions that I'm assigned to as a member of this board have returned all into in-person meetings, which has been pleasant. There's a lot of new people to meet, and so we finally get to meet in person and see each other face to face. One in particular, I attended the Parks and Recreations Commission meeting a week and a half ago, and the biggest thing on their agenda was the purchase of new playground equipment for Brodovich Park. And we had two options, and that became a fairly lively discussion on which option to take. So anyways, I had to resort to my skills as a grandparent in trying to determine which playground equipment my grandchildren would prefer. But I pretty much left it up to the members of the board that reside in the Tahoe Township to determine which playground equipment would be most appropriate. But I'm glad to, when I gave that presentation to my wife later on, I was glad that she also concurred with their choice of option B. So anyways, and she did it based on the same thing of being a grandparent. So anyways, and it was the first time that Scott Morgan indicated it was the first time that board did not come to a unanimous conclusion on an item for the last 20 or so years that he's been involved with that board. So that was kind of interesting. But even they have difficult decisions sometimes, even with playground equipment. So
Keeping in mind,
anyways, that's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Any further comments from the board? Seeing none, we'll ask for closing comments from the audience. Is there any public comment? Seeing none, this meeting is adjourned.